Hi everyone! How are you all today? My name is Teacher Maria Angelica Cabicting Torres.
And my name is Teacher Jillian May Ayuyao.
And welcome to Learn with Teacher MJ. Aren't you feeling bored yet? Wanna learn something new? Well, for today's video, we will provide you guys some knowledge about our beloved country, Philippines.
Yes, that is right. Although, we won't be talking about the beautiful islands that we can see in the Philippines, or wonderful beaches that many love to see. For today's video, we will be talking about something new. We will be talking about what dependency theory is and how does the Philippines become affected by this theory. Trust me, it won't be boring kaya. Tara, let's find out.
What is dependency? Dependency theory was a theory by Raoul Prebisch that was proposed in 1950s and later became popular in 1960s to 70s. It explains the underdeveloped or developing countries offer the cheap labor and raw materials on the world market, and are then benefited by the advanced or developed countries by producing the resources into finished goods that underdeveloped and developing countries end up purchasing these goods at higher prices. That contradicts the original price of the resources. These resources could have benefited the underdeveloped countries if they could have used it for their own.
Now that everything we need to know is all explained, you're probably asking, what does the Philippines have to do with this theory? Well, we want to know why the Philippines is still a developing country because, as for some who do not know, the Philippines is categorized as one of the developing nations and is still currently a third world country. And might I just add, we are teaching this not because we want to belittle or sympathize the Philippines. Our goal and mission here is to educate people who do not understand or are not aware of this theory and the status of the Philippines as one of the developing countries.
A third world country is a term that describes the class of economically developing countries. People often use the term third world as for poor or developing nations. Before, we used first world class for richer countries like the US, Europe, and etc., wherein the second world class for the countries that refers to the middle class, where this is more stable, more developed than the third world countries, but less stable and less developed than the first world countries. However, the phrase third world has become outdated as it is an offensive term for characterizing a country, while the preferred term for this is either a developing nation, an underdeveloped country, or a low and middle income country.
Why is the Philippines still a third world country, you may ask? In an interview in one of the famous radio stations in the Philippines, Dr. Francisco Duque III, who is the Secretary of the Department of Health, was asked if it is true that the Philippines was among countries with a weak healthcare system. His reply, however, according to the United Nations Development Program, the Philippines' infant mortality rate is very high, which is 22 deaths per 1,000 live births, and the life expectancy in the Philippines is 71 years. Its industrialization is minimal, and many of its citizens are denied access to quality healthcare and higher education.
In the 2019 Human Development Report, the Philippines, with an HDI value of 0.712, placed 106 out of the 189 countries and territories. The per capita GDP in the Philippines is $7,943, which is not enough for a family to live off. And not only that, institutions, health, labor market, information communications technology adoption, macroeconomic stability, skills, production market, financial system, market size, business dynamics. Out of these 12 areas measured, the Philippines' lowest ranking was in health at 102nd overall. With that being said, the Philippines is historically still a third world country and is currently a developing country based on these reports. In our honest opinion, the report stated above silently speak that the problem why Philippines is still a third world country is because poverty remains to be one of the mortal enemies of the country. Many remain to be living in impoverished state. People remain to be jobless and homeless. The fitting solution that I consider in order for the Philippines to become a developed nation is that the government should be giving jobs to its citizens and prioritizing the essential institutions and centers in the Philippines instead. By this, I see this as a solution because, as said a while ago, many do not have access to proper healthcare because in some situations, most families cannot afford the expenses of healthcare. And other than that, many remain to be jobless and still live in hardships. Thus, other people choose to commit crime as another resort for living, which is not also good for the country and the citizens as well. Another reason the Philippines couldn't excel more to being a developed country is because of a huge corruption happening here. Reasons as well came across the population mismanagement and low salary wages. The minimum wage is expected to reach 537 pesos per day of 2020 according to Trading Economics Global Macro Models and Analysis Expectations. Earning that amount with today's expenses still won't be enough to sustain oneself.